physical pain in any form or shape, it's extremely annoying. And if you have had anything remotely chronicle, you know what I mean. Out of all these different types of pain, the most excruciating ones is back pain. And I had an accident years ago, and it was not my fault, but it messed up my L4 and L5. And at that time, I didn't even know what it was, but I went to the doctors and they said that it has shooken your L4 and L5. And excuse me. And because the pain was so bad, and we tried everything, it sort of didn't help. And one of the suggestions they had was for me to do a surgery. And I don't remember which type of insurance I had that at that time, but I was still in college, and it was not a really good one. And it meant that I had to pay a bunch, which obviously I did not have. I had hardly money to eat decent food every day, so I sort of stuck with the fact that I had to heal myself in a way. And I was able to get some sort of compensation to go to a physical therapist, and I did that for a year. But in the beginning, the pain was so bad that it drove me into depression, like deep depression. There are a lot of things that was going on around my life in general, but the worst part of it was that it was a hinder for me to take some of my classes. I had to decrease the number of units that I was taking at college at that time. And that was to me like a death sentence, because it meant that I would have to delay my college applications, my further studies. And also it meant that there was a lot of administrative issues that I was going to face. But the pain was so bad that at one point I was literally in bed, and there was no position, whether I was laying down, sitting, or standing, that would take. And there was a time that even if I changed my position, like with one little tiny movement, the pain would either stop for like a minute or so and then start again, or it would get worse. So for me, 24/7, I was in search for a position where the pain would stop. And because of my stomach, I didn't want to take strong medications. So I would just rely on your normal pain relief, which did not help, obviously. But what I'm trying to say is that the only thing that helped me in that deep moment of despair was my textbooks. And you might laugh, but it was the only thing that gave me a hint of a hope that kind of made me move forward. So every time, for example, I picked up a textbook and I was gonna, read it or study it for that maybe 1 or 2 units that I was taking for that particular semester, it was the hope it gave me helped me relieve some of that pain. The pain was still there, but somehow in my psyche, I was in a better sort of hopeful state. And as a result, even if I made one little gradual improvement, or in terms of my homework or the class assignments that I was doing, that was a big achievement for me. And I combined that with some very, very light physical activities like walking. but I could not really walk. So my walking literally looked like an 80-year-old woman. It was like one little step at a time. But I gradually, every day, I went out and I just took one little step at a time and I added it. And after a year, it became much better. And even until today, if I stop exercising or if I'm too stressed out or maybe too cold, the back pain starts a little bit. And it's not just the back pain, it actually goes through the whole body. And that's also one of the reasons I still keep, even if it's very light exercises like walking. And I also, every time I sit after an hour, I just get up and do like a 2 minutes walk or something like that, just to give my back a little bit of a break. And interestingly, also after that, I stopped with getting health insurance because I felt like it was a waste of money. And at that time, I had to have health insurance because of my situation at that time. But after that, if it was something that I had to pay for myself, I stopped because it was literally not really useful, at least for me at that time. I don't know how things are now, but that's also another reason that I really, really, really do my best to keep healthy as much as I can, so that I don't get into those situations again. But of course, there are times you cannot help it. It just, things happen. I mean, it's life, right? So there's just so much you can do to prevent. But the reason I'm bringing this up is to go back to what we talked last week, in that there are ways to insert hope in even during the excruciating pain or hopelessness and helplessness. And for me, that thing was my textbook, or it was my education. It was like going to class, because that was sort of the hope I had for the future. With that, I want to share with you parts of a book that I'm working on, my next book, that has to do with information, because that is something that I've talked about in the past, where to me information is extremely, extremely fascinating, and it is the underlying elements of everything that exists in this world. And with this book, I am trying to explain that, as to how that information theory could be evolved. And in order to make the point in terms of the information transfer and communication at the cellular and atomic level, the fascination is how these atoms and cells communicate at that molecular atomic level, and how do they know how to interpret that information. Because at that atomic level, they need to have those communication with one another so that they can operate, they can function the way in which we know the world to be. And to make those experiments, I'm using Python to do computational equations at the Python level. And because of that, I'm also able to create some plots and some charts where these computational experiments can be illustrated such that the information at that atomic level could be communicated, transferred, and translated. And those computational equations at the experimental level, but theoretical experimental level, can make the case using Python. And here I'm just gonna read to you the rough draft of the introduction section that I have. And hopefully in the future I can read more as it evolves. And again, this is a rough draft, so bear with me. Introduction: the primacy of information. Across many scientific disciplines, energy is often viewed as a foundational element of reality. In fields such as physics and chemistry, of course, neuroscience as well, energy underpins theories of matter, motion, and interaction, governing how particles and forces shape the universe. Energy is indeed essential, driving the processes that animate natural systems. However, as we probe deeper into the mechanics underlying complex, organized phenomena, particularly in biological and cognitive systems, we encounter a critical concept that energy alone cannot fully explain: information. Information is the structured exchange, interpretation, and transformation of data, and it plays a unique role in organizing and directing energy towards specific ends. In fields like biology, neuroscience, and even quantum mechanics, information emerges as a key to understanding how complex, adaptive systems come into being and sustain themselves. For instance, DNA is not merely a chemical molecule, it is a carrier of genetic information that instructs cells on how to grow, adapt, and survive. In neuroscience, neural networks do not simply transmit electrical energy, they encode information in complex firing patterns, giving rise to thoughts, memory, and human behavior or animal behavior. Even in the realm of quantum mechanics, particles display behaviors suggesting that they are not merely following deterministic energy states, but also are engaged in information-rich interaction. While energy provides the raw potential, it is information at the atomic level that brings structure and coherence to systems, transforming energy into the organized complexity observed in life and cognition. This perspective suggests that rather than viewing everything solely as energy, we might more accurately say that everything is information. It is the information embedded within, more accurately say that everything is information. It is the information embedded within and communicated by particles, molecules, and cells that create order and purpose within natural systems. Energy without this structured flow of information would lack the guidance necessary to build, sustain, and adapt living systems. Thus, to grasp the full depth of reality and the nature of complex systems, we must recognize information as a foundational element alongside energy and everything else, of course. Information is not simply a byproduct of energetic interaction, but a primary force in its own right, one that enables communication, adaptation, and the emergence of life itself. Consider the role of genetic information within cells. DNA doesn't merely exist as a structure full of energy. It encodes instructions, a precise set of sequence that guide molecular machinery, control protein synthesis, and maintain cellular health. Without the information codes in DNA, the energy present within cellular components would have no organizing directive, leaving the cell unable to function, adapt, or survive. This shows that energy, even when abundant, requires information to be meaningful and to contribute to complex life forms. In this way, information acts as the underlying syntax of reality, providing energy with the structure it needs to create life, cognition, and order. Without the informational rules governing how particles, atoms, and molecules interact, the energy in the universe would lack coherence, leaving randomness in place of organized, functioning systems. And then it moves on into different chapters. Then it moves on to different chapters. And this book also talks about the way in which we can then break down information at an atomic and cellular level, because every time you want to examine and research something, you need to break it down into coherent, understandable components. And in this case, this book talks about and breaks down information into 5 different components and calls it the 5 pillar of information. To some extent, this was also exposed and talked about in the previous book. But in this book, it will go much more deeper in that. And these 5 pillars are also what are being used in terms of the Python coding to make sure that when those equations and computations are set up, we have clear, coherent, different sections of information that are divided into coherent components, part of the equation. And then there's also an equation presented in this to help symbolize and explain information at that cellular and atomic level. That's all I had for today. Let me know if you like it, hate it, and like, comments, and share to increase the engagement. I think I'm gonna read a little bit more of this rough draft, but some of you are interested in the previous book, so let me know. I can also read from that. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend. Bye.